Okay, and we are live. Hi, Sydney. Welcome to Boss Talks.
Thank you for having me. Honored to be here.
Yes, we are so excited to have Sydney Gore with us today, journalist. And Sydney, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. So I'm Sydney Gore, based in New York City. And right now I'm a freelance writer, editor, journalist, consultant, storyteller, whatever labels you want to throw around that have to do with writing. But I kind of do it all.
All right, amazing. And what have been some moments in your career lately that you're proud of?
Great question. 2020 was pretty crazy. I think that everyone was impacted by it, big or small, no matter what. Collectively, we all kind of went through things individually. I'm sure that there are a lot of variations. I know for me, I ended up getting laid off from my full-time job. So I had a full-time editorial position. I was a features editor at High Snobiety as the pandemic kind of continued to wreak its havoc. We ended up having layoffs. So 25% of the company had been laid off, including me. And so with that, I was forced to have to freelance. I'd already been doing a little bit of freelancing, just kind of getting back in the habit of it prior to the pandemic. But then once this happened, I had to just make it my full-time duty. Definitely was really difficult in the beginning, just because a lot of companies were going through the same cycle of, trying to keep everybody on deck and having to adapt. So a lot of freelance budgets were starting to get cut at different outlets. A few places that were doing freelance commissions were not offering the best rates, but when you kind of have no other source of income, you're just trying to take what you can get. So went from that to the Black Lives Matter movement really getting a lot of momentum in June, unfortunately, because of a lot of the police brutality incidents that occurred. And with that, it was really interesting because all of a sudden I was having all of these editors and just different outlets starting to reach out to me for things. And I was like, like a month ago, you were saying that you didn't have any budget. Now all of a sudden you have all this money magically that you want to throw at me, but it was kind of only to cover certain things. So really having to pay extra attention with navigating that, but then was able to negotiate higher rates. So just kind of as the pandemic went on, I was starting to be able to really increase the value of my work, and knowing full well that I have years, almost a decade of experience kind of under my belt. So I know that I should be getting paid more. But to actually be able to just ask for what at the time for me were sort of reach rates, and places being yeah, okay, no problem. And not kind of coming back to me about it. I was just wait, I could have been doing this the whole time.
That's
Yeah, it was a really interesting experience. But yeah, kind of closing out the year, with pieces with the New York Times and Vogue was huge for me. Those are just been lifetime goals of mine, huge dreams, and for them both to happen the same month of the same year during what was a really tumultuous year was just a really, really incredible, for lack of a better word. I'm really grateful, and it just really kind of was the cherry on top of just continuing to work my way up. So yeah, I'm just really, really proud of that. And all of the other stories I was able to tell, I really feel this past year, I just got to work on a lot of pieces that I was really passionate about, that felt very aligned with what I stand for and what I believe in, and just the direction that I would kind of like to see content go. So just really quick examples of that. One piece that I did was about BIPOC farmers in New York, and just kind of how they're tackling food sovereignty, and dealing with a lot of the inequality in that space, especially during the pandemic, just because we've obviously seen a lot of changes happen with food distribution and everything. So that piece meant a lot to me, just on a personal level, on the local level of being a New Yorker now. And then a random one, but a super fun one for me was just this sort of trend report I did on mushrooms. Yeah, it was for the strategists, and it started from me just noticing these mushroom lamps popping up everywhere, and then realizing like, wait, now I'm starting to see all these mushroom wellness companies, and then noticing that mushrooms were in the ingredients of different like beauty products, and then seeing fashion brands suddenly like taking on the mushroom motif.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to kind of explore that further. Sorry, it's a really long answer to your question.
That's an interesting phenomenon. I've seen that too with like mushroom
Right?
elixirs have become like the ingredient.
Right. And once you see it, like you can't unsee it. You just start seeing it more, and it just kind of like multiplies. And that's essentially what mushrooms do in real life anyway. But yeah, so I've been forever changed by a lot of things, but especially mushrooms. Medicinal, not like psychedelic shrooms specifically.
Okay. Yeah, in the beginning I wasn't sure what mushrooms you were going down, but okay, that's almost even more interesting. Just regular mushrooms. Thank you, Sydney.
Oh, something I forgot to mention. Sorry, I got to do like my first major cover stories last year. So that was a huge deal for me. And again, just really grateful to have been given the opportunities. Kind of thought that at that point, you know, I've just been doing this for so long. So I was sort of like, all right, maybe this just isn't in the cards for me. I have a lot of other things going for me. I can kind of let that one go. And then again, it just like all happened within the same year. And it was, yeah, really.
Can you tell us about the cover stories?
Sure. So I got to do my first like major print one with Crack magazine. So that has Rico Nasty on the cover. It was for like this special edition collection that they did. I think they also had like Kylie Minogue on one cover. I can't remember the others, but that was the first one that I was asked. And obviously it took a while because it was going to be in print. So it was like several months of a process. And then while I was working on that, High Snob ended up reaching out to me, and they wanted me to do like their digital cover stories that they do front page. So they asked me to do one on Jayden Smith.
Wow.
Which, yeah, it was again kind of nuts because I was like, I've always wanted to interview him. Never thought I would get like a cover opportunity, but it was, you know, he was really great. And then a couple months after that, they asked me to do another cover that would be like proper print and little Nas X. So.
Oh, wow. That's a big one because he has some iconic covers.
Yeah, and that one, I'm so sorry that I don't remember the names of the photographers. My old colleague, Corey Stokes, did all of like the fashion direction and everything, but it's a really, really amazing visual spread. I would highly recommend looking into it, and I'll send you links and everything.
Yeah, please do.
But it's really beautifully done, and he even said like it was one of his favorite shoots that he's ever done. So really proud of that one, and it was an all-black team. So.
Oh, that's amazing! Wow, congratulations, Sydney. It sounds like you've turned 2020 into quite a year for yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, professionally, it was great. Personally, you know, we went through it. There were some moments of regression and spiraling, but still alive to tell the tale of how we got through it.
Yeah, and what were some of the ways that you overcame some of the challenges that you faced both this year and in your career as a whole?
Great question. So something for me that I've spent the past couple of years really trying to just prioritize more is like that separation of like the work-life balance. Like I don't really believe in a work-life balance. I feel like before the pandemic, I was very much on the mindset of having a life outside of work and being able to have like a very firm boundary. Like I come into work, you know, whether that's from 9 to 5 or 10 to 6, whatever your hours are. It's like when I clock in, I'm on the job, I'm doing my work. And when it's time for me to go, like, I don't want anybody calling me about something. I don't answer emails. Like I was always very adamant about like, specifically music people, PRs, not texting me because I never had a work phone. I always have only had, like I have the same phone number from middle school. So this is like a very old phone number. I'm not trying to change my phone number. So I've always been like, unless it's an absolute emergency for something, like I do not want to be contacted on my personal phone off work hours. And so with the pandemic happening, at first I had a really hard time adjusting to like working from home. And mind you, like I love my home. I honestly hated going into the office. It was just like not the vibe for me. not good for the way that I get things done. So being able to work from home at first, I was really excited about. But then I just realized that, I'm working in the same place where I live and where I sleep and where I exercise. And so there was no degree of separation, and I couldn't really go anywhere to just like take a break or, get that matcha or go to get lunch. So also I was having a difficult time just being able to focus on the work that I was doing at that point, because I just felt like, we're in the middle of like a global health crisis. Why are we talking about sneakers,
Right.
So I was grappling with that. And then I got laid off, and I was like, okay, now I'm in this position where I don't have to answer to anyone. I'm not being micromanaged. I can make my own hours, but like, I was just so hungry to be staying busy and to be productive. So for the first couple of months, I was really, really terrible with time management. I just like was constantly working all the time, and I was like, wait, I'm freelance. Aren't I supposed to be working less? Like I literally am for the first time in a position where I can make my own hours. I can dictate my own schedule. So I need to be doing better about that. So I'm not burning myself out, because, we don't know when this is going to end. I mean, here we are in 2021. We're still dealing with this.
A year later. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I would say around that point in June, when things kind of started to shift, I really realized like, you know what, I need to prioritize my health, like on all levels, like mental, physical, emotional, spiritual. And so I started kind of picking certain days where I would do my work. If I felt like doing it, if I was in the right mindset, then I would work, I'd answer my emails, take calls, work on stories, whatever it is that I needed to do. Mm-hmm. And if I woke up on a day and I was just like, you know what, I don't really have the motivation, it's not there unless I'm like on a deadline, I was always like, it can wait. And so I started to get comfortable with asking for extensions for stories, really being able to sit with something and be like, you know what, this isn't super urgent, or like, you know what, I'm just not really feeling this, like listening to my gut and my intuition, and being able to say no to things, being able to pass on things, just being able to kind of speak up for myself a little bit more and just take better care of myself. So I'd really say that the pandemic in that sense was really, I guess, crucial for me to kind of like learn those lessons of just really prioritizing myself and my needs. And I feel like I have a better grip like now going into this new year of just like making sure that I space out my work, like not overloading myself and really avoiding burnout. That was something I dealt with very early in my career. And at the time, I didn't know what it was. We didn't have the language then, especially coming out of college, it was like, right, you're always working, like you're interning, you're working, you're going to class, like you're always busy, like a hamster on a wheel. So of course, like I was going to experience burnout, but I just didn't, I thought it was normal. And I just thought that was to be expected, and like, it's not okay. And that, hugely impacted me at my first job. So knowing now what I wish I'd known then, I know what the signs are, and I kind of know what the red flags are for myself. So I just try not to kind of like go into that place, because it's really terrible and I don't recommend it for anybody.
I know. I feel like recognizing the signs in yourself is like the crucial step, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sydney. That's some great advice, and I know we definitely all still need it right now.
Yeah, especially when you're young, because I feel like a lot of people will tell you like, oh, make sure like get enough sleep, drink plenty of water, blah, blah, blah. But when you're like fresh out in an industry and you're starting kind of like at the bottom of a structure within a company, you're just kind of happy to be there, and you're willing to do anything, even if that means, like, yeah, maybe skipping lunch or staying late, coming in early, just like making all of these sacrifices just because you think that that's what you're expected to do. And it's not, and people will totally take advantage of you and your lack of experience and just like awareness of what is crossing a boundary. And ultimately, no offense, but a lot of these companies just, they don't care about your well-being. They don't care about your health. A lot of places now don't even really care about like your career advancement. There's such a lack of mentorship. So unless you get lucky and you end up having a colleague, who maybe looks out for you, or perhaps you have a mentor from like a prior internship or something else, like people aren't going to tell you these things. And like HR is not looking out for you. HR is a scam. And I could go on a rant about that for hours, but I'll just say that to say it.
Yeah, I did. I think just read something about how HR is a rep of the company, right? It needs to be treated as such instead of a rep of like you as the employee. So yeah, that's an important point, Sydney. I think that definitely leads into why right now, especially this generation, a lot of people are turning either like freelance or entrepreneur or to be a little bit more like self-starter.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something I never wanted to do for a really long time. I was very much raised with this mentality of like really being encouraged to be a career woman and to be independent, you know, make my own money. Like I've been looking back at a lot of journals and diaries from when I was a child, like, you know, age 8, and writing things being all like, oh, like when I grow up, like I want to be a writer, like I wanted to do all these really big, ambitious things. And to some degree, I'm like doing a lot of the things that, you know, I wanted to, but I just had no idea what it actually meant to be like a full-time worker. And I don't even think that my parents fully understand, at least with like what I do, but just the way that our generation treats like a career, and having like a profession in the creative space, at least.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like sorry, were you even asking a question or was I just going on a tangent?
No, we both kind of went down the tangent of like, you know, entrepreneurship and.
Right, sorry, entrepreneurship and like working for yourself. Yeah, so I was always just kind of conditioned into like, okay, you know, you spend your whole life like going to school, right? You get your education, you go to college, in college specifically like AU, which you know is super like intern heavy. So going in, like, okay, you're going to be interning at the same time that you're going to school. And then from there, you're supposed to have a job right out of college. And then you work until who knows when, and maybe like start a family or something, settle down, do like the traditional things that are expected of you. But within that structure, I was never at least like encouraged, like, yeah, you should like work for yourself. And none of my teachers were ever like, oh yeah, like you should be freelance. It was always like, oh, like start at the bottom somewhere, like start local and then work your way up to like the big leagues. So I was just always being told like, okay, you should be prepared to be working for someone else. And so within that, I've just always been, I guess, more comfortable in the structure and like the security of working for like, whether it's a corporation or a smaller like independent company, but sort of always having like somebody else being in charge, like handling the money and also being able to just like have the guaranteed benefits. Over the past couple of years, I've definitely felt like I would rather freelance just because as a writer, there's definitely a lot more creative freedom in that and being able to specifically work on things that you want to instead of having to work on a ton of things and maybe as a trade-off, like getting to do that one thing that you want to do. And over the years, I would say like when I first started as an editorial assistant, you know, then like got promoted to, I think it was assistant digital editor. That was on my first job at Nylon. It was a lot of just kind of like busy admin stuff in the beginning, you know, having to just like deal with all the things that people didn't want to, like scheduling stuff, helping my bosses with things. And then, like I said, like managing interns. And as I sort of started to work my way up, then I was able to kind of like trade off those responsibilities and then focus more on what I wanted to do. And then like moving into my last job with that, I really only wrote things that I actually wanted to do. Unless it was something where maybe we were short staffed and it was sort of like an emergency and they really needed someone to like hop on some news story and then I would help out. But in that last role, I was really like, you know what? Yeah, I don't really want to deal with having to write these things that don't really like matter to me, for lack of a better word. So now being in this position of just being able to pick and choose the assignments that I'm working on, whether that's like me pitching or an editor coming to me and then either accepting it or passing on it, that's definitely been really empowering. So I would totally encourage more people to consider that, especially, you know, you don't have to come the traditional way that I did and, you know, go to school for journalism. As we know, a lot of people can kind of like start from nothing. I think ultimately you just kind of need to have the basic skills as a writer, and then it's sort of on you to learn the rest of the field and how it works. But I also started freelancing like while I was still in college. So even though I did get a job out of school, like I was already getting commissioned by like 17 and Pigeons and Planes. And I was like still talking to like, you know, maybe we'll talk about this later, but one of my first internships was at Billboard. So I like had a lot of contacts like at places like that to do other like assignments while I was still in school. And like I was writing for the school paper and everything. Obviously it's like I had to write for my classes, but like the work I was doing in class wasn't going anywhere. So once I sort of got a better understanding of like how things worked, I was able to start freelancing before I even came out of school. So like I already had like tons of clips to be able to do other things.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's great to me. Well, thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
So Sydney, what is some advice that you have for young women who want to get into music journalism or journalism, music journalism, culture journalism, you know, whatever you do right now as a whole?
Absolutely. So the first thing I would say is just like start writing, whether it's making your own little site or a newsletter, a blog, start somewhere. For me, I started actually doing journalism pretty young. Like I was on the school paper in middle school. I'm glad that I don't have any copies of whatever I was writing. It probably wasn't very good, but I started as early as then. I was writing for my high school newspaper. And then I had a friend who was like, wait, Sydney, you're always going to concerts. You really like music and entertainment. Why don't you start writing reviews? And it had never really like crossed my mind to do that. But once I kind of course, there's the ring of getting a package. 1 second.
No problem.
Okay, sometimes my mailman just like lets me know that I have mail. It's not like I have to open the door. Okay, so in high school, I started doing album reviews. And as I kind of got in the habit of that, I was like, oh, you know, I think that that's something that I would kind of like to maybe pursue in a more like long-term way. I was always reading magazines. Obviously, I read like books and things, and I was watching television, but I really, really loved magazines as opposed to newspapers. Newspapers just kind of like didn't do it for me, even though I was on the paper. But I loved magazines. I was always reading like Nylon, 17, and then like Rolling Stone, and Alternative Press was like the big one for me because I went to Warped Tour. So like anything in that sort of like realm I was really into. And I sort of kind of got this idea with a couple of friends of mine who I would go to concerts with. And I was like, wouldn't it be so cool, you know, if like we started our own like company or something. And like my friend was a photographer. So I was like, you could be the photographer and I could do the writing, and we would be like this kind of like duo. We never did it, but we like always talked about it. And all that to say, by the time I had, you know, picked my college and decided, okay, I'm going to go to American, I wasn't entirely sure if I wanted to do journalism. I picked AU because they had both a J school program, but also like if I changed my mind, I could do like general communications or like creative writing, literature. Like there would be options if I decided like this isn't what I'm sure I want to do. But kind of like 2 weeks in on campus, I ended up getting approached by someone to be featured in like their fashion column for the Eagle. And then as we were talking and she was interviewing me, she realized that I was really into music. And she was like, oh, you should totally come to a pitch meeting. They give away free concert tickets. Like all you have to do is write a review. And I was like, wait, I could go to concerts for free. And then all these things kind of just started coming together for me as I was reading more, you know, like Pitchfork and Rolling Stone. And at the time, like Property of Zach, which was really big in Philly. And I realized like, oh, this is like a job. This can be a career. And I think it was also after watching, what is it? Almost Famous. That was what really like convinced me. That was like the big seller. I was like, okay, I could actually make a career out of this. Like this is a job I could actually have. I just have to sort of like find the right spaces. So doing the school paper was really, really fundamental for me in college, just because I was able to get access in a way that I definitely wouldn't have had like without having that sort of network and being able to, you know, I was dealing with a lot of the publicists that I actually talk to now. I'd been talking to some of them since I was in college, which is funny.
Wow, interesting. At AU.
Yeah. So I was already kind of like getting in the habit of like getting used to dealing with PRs and knowing how to talk to them. From there, I did do internships, which at the time were unpaid, but luckily like my parents were really supportive, and I would do my internships in the summer. I grew up in New Jersey, so New Jersey isn't as far from New York as like DC. So I would usually intern in the summer and just like commute on NJ Transit. But my first editorial internship was at Billboard, which, you know, is huge. And sometimes I'm still like, I don't know why they picked me, but I think it's honestly because I already had like writing clips when I applied for that internship. And again, that was through me doing the school paper. And then I also had this like little dinky WordPress blog that I would just post my musings on. I obviously had a Tumblr. I was big into Tumblr, but I kind of like to keep that on the DL so I could post personal things and rants. But yeah, it was just like always writing in so many different ways. And then, you know, the people that I kind of needed to took notice. And yeah, as I started interning, I specifically at Billboard, I remember I was on the online editorial team. So I was considered like a web intern. And at the time I was a little upset because I really wanted to do print. Cause like I said, I like loved magazines, and I was like, web, like that's so, it just wasn't as sexy, you know?
Right.
So I was on the web intern team, and during that summer, I would also kind of make a point to sort of like walk around the office and introduce myself to people in different departments, like just to kind of learn about what they did, kind of do what we're doing. So I would literally ask them like how they got to where they are, what they're like, how they sort of like were eligible for their role, and just like any kind of advice that they could give me. So I would just ask them like to go to coffee. And then sometimes they would give me little tasks to do. So through that, I was doing like running errands for like the special projects editor and like people that worked in the charts department. And so I was kind of like getting this exposure in all these different ways specific to the music industry. But, you know, from a young age, and that was just kind of like, as soon as I got like, I guess like an opened door, I just really like walked through it and tried to kind of like take as much advantage as I possibly could, and stayed in touch with a lot of those people. So like I was saying before, just kind of like over the years, as I got older and more experienced and people kind of moved around, they would always keep me in mind for things, or were always willing to be there to give me advice. Yeah, sorry, very long answer to your question, but basically to sum it all up, just start writing somewhere, whether that's your own platform, or try to reach out to other places. If you're going to school, I highly recommend trying to do like a school paper, a magazine. I also did college radio. So that's again how I was specifically focusing on music. I just sort of would like align myself in these spaces that sort of like catered to that passion of mine. Even if it wasn't writing, right? Like doing radio, which sometimes I'm like, maybe I should do a podcast, but I don't know. But I loved specifically emerging music and like up and coming talent and independent artists. So doing the college radio was like great for that specifically for me. And then in all these other areas that I was sort of involved in, I was getting to, you know, like work with like more mainstream acts. Like I think one time I went to a free show for like Cyndi Lauper, like Cyndi Lauper is huge. And I wouldn't have gotten those tickets if I wasn't, you know, doing the school paper. One of my first like interviews that I got to do through the Eagle was for the 21 Jump Street press run. So I got to interview Channing Tatum, Jonah Hill, and Ice Cube as a freshman in college, which like,
that's crazy.
You know, like it's crazy. Like when I think about it, I'm always like, they shouldn't have let me do that. Like they only did because I really wanted to review the movie. I was obsessed with Dave Franco at the time. And then they ended up getting that press offer, and they kind of had to ask me if I wanted to do it because I said that I wanted to review the movie. I know everyone was really mad that was older than me, but I did it, and now here I am.
Well, that's amazing, Sydney. Thank you so much for sharing your advice and your story with us. It's been great having you here on Boss Talks.